lot of slides in this slide deck. But as I said a minute or two ago, this is, except for the resources and the dates of events happening this spring, the information you'll see tonight is essentially the same information we show before each season of athletics. So we'll get started. Again, I remind you that please mute your phone by hitting either *6 or your mute button on your phone. And another reminder, this session is being recorded. So Mike, I'm getting ready to start, and I'm going to go right now. Again, welcome everyone. My name is Ron Freeman, along with Natalia Stephan from Special Olympics Maryland. We are the venue directors for athletics. This is a real quick agenda. We'll go through entries and entry process, rules, when and where the qualifiers are for track and field this spring. We'll provide links for resources for things you might be able to use in your coaching of your athletes this spring. And towards the end, somebody, I'm not sure if it be Natalia or Mike, will go over the paperwork and the key forms and the entry process. And we'll share you the dates, key dates, and we'll, if we have time, we will end with a question and answer session. Like I said, we have a number of slides. This is not new information. I'm not going to read through every single slide. I mean, I realize there's some people who may be on the phone and not see the slides, but they will be sent out. So we're just going to go over the key points of most of these slides. Again, this year, athletes may enter up to 3 individual events and up to 2 relays. Those 2 relays need to be either the 4x1 or the 4x4 in addition to the 4x2. We run the 4x2 on Saturday and the 4x1 and the 4x4 on Sundays. Again, pentathlon, the 5 events for that, is considered one single event. We would love to have more athletes participate in that. It's a great test of our athletes' ability. So if we have athletes who are ready to move up to the pentathlon, that would be fantastic. Move on. The entry process for the long jump, if you're entering the standing long jump, you may not also enter the long jump, or sometimes referred to as the running long jump. Standing long jump, these are for the athletes who are not quite able to do the running long jump, so they may also not participate in the high jump. For softball and tennis ball throw, if the athlete is participating in that, they may not also enter the shot put or the mini jab. And our athletes cannot participate in both the softball throw and the tennis ball throw. Wheelchair athletes, the wheelchair events are open to all athletes who use a wheelchair to move around, or if they are also for an assistant walk. The motorized wheelchairs, however, are not permitted in manual wheelchair events and vice versa. Okay, a couple of rule combinations for the running and walking events. Athletes who are entered in events shorter than 100 meters may not also run events longer than 100 meters. Athletes in the 100 may also be entered in the 50. And that's, hopefully to move our athletes up into more challenging events for them as they gain more confidence and more ability through the years. The relays are only open to athletes who can run at least 100 meters. So if you have an athlete who is doing a 25-meter race, they cannot also run the 4x100 relay. This slide here is to show the guidelines for the percentages for your delegation's athletes. the 50-meter, no more than 25% of your delegation's athletes may be entered in this event. For the softball throw, no more than 20%. For the standing long jump, no more than 25%. Obviously, our goal in every Special Olympics event is to move our athletes into more challenging competition, not only for athletics, but for all events.
Question, please.
Sure.
If you had a really small team delegation, like if I'm only bringing 4, you just said that I can only enter one of my athletes in the 50.
These are guidelines, and we certainly understand if there are unique situations, and a unique situation certainly is bringing 4 athletes to the game. So,
Okay.
This particular, as we division our athletes, we'll see your delegation just as 4 athletes, and we're not going to be, no one's going to be penalized from for any delegation that has either a high percentage of younger athletes or certainly for the smaller delegations. So,
okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a special situation or a special need, just contact your regional sports director. Contact information is in the slide deck and will be in the email that goes out, and they can work with you on that.
Okay, thank you.
The rules, we'll be using 2012 competition rules for this year, and I was just over to the Special Olympics website today. There have been no rule changes for this year as of now, so if there are, we will keep you posted and we'll get that information out there. Shot put for female 8 to 11, the weight is 2 kilograms, 4.4 pounds. 800 meters. These are the same rules that we've gone, we've used, in the past 4 years that I've been venue director. 800 meter, we'll start with a 1-turn stagger. 1500 and longer races, we'll use a waterfall. 4x4, depending on the number of teams, we'll use a 3-turn stagger. If there are more than 4 teams, a 1-turn stagger, more than likely if we have 4 or fewer teams. Some of these decisions will be made, once we see the number of teams we have entered in these events. Protests may be filed by an athlete or an official representative. That official representative needs to be a head coach. Protests need to be taken to the control center, and I will be, myself and Natalia will be looking at all protests, but make sure you find us. Just don't drop them off on the table. Whoops, somehow I went backwards. Sorry. Scoring, and again, this is the same, and we will emphasize this to all of our timers and all of our field event folks. Field events are marked to the next lowest centimeter. The thinking is if they have thrown something 5 meters, 65.4 centimeters, they haven't reached 5 meters and 66. So their distance will be measured, will be marked as what they have reached. So we'll be marking down to the next lowest centimeter. Again, here's the weights on the shots. I think it's the next slide where we talk about the timing for track events. No. I was going to say where, the timing for track events, if an athlete's time is 10.15 seconds, their time will be rounded up to the next 10th of a second because they haven't completed it in 10.1. I think we have a slide a little bit further on for that. Rule reminders, I know everyone's going to be starting to practice pretty soon. Knee jab. Throw must be over the shoulder, has to land tip first with the tip inside the inner edges of the sector line. The runway for mini jab is 4x8. For softball, any kind of throw is acceptable, and we mark from where the ball first touches the ground. And the softball and ball throw sector is 3 meters by 2 meters. Standing long jump must be a 2-foot takeoff. Must jump with both feet, both with toes of both feet behind the takeoff line. And the distance is marked from the takeoff line to the front. Let me reread this. Distance is marked nearest the takeoff line to the front of the takeoff line. So where your athlete hits the sand, that mark closest to the takeoff line is the distance that they jump. Again, here's the picture of the sector. This is for softball, 2x3, and the mini jab is 4x8. The long jump, our toe board, oftentimes this toe board is a chalk outline on the runway, but it is 1 meter from the edge of the sand pit. Your athlete must be able to reach the sand pit to have a qualified jump. If they do not, it is a fault. High jump, you have athletes who are doing the high jump this year. They must be able to jump at least 1 meter high to enter this event. For the athletes doing the high jump, they can place a marker on the runway area for their takeoff position. Standard track colors were always one of my favorite slides. I don't know how standard these track colors are. Frankly, I don't know if these are the colors on the Towson University track, but if you're going to a high school or a college in your area, you can use this as a guide for the standard track colors, but don't use it as gospel. It's just not always the case, but you'll be looking for these kinds of lines as you set up your athletes for your training events.
And Ron, those are the colors used at Towson's track unless they repaint them.
Okay, great. Okay, this is a picture of the start lines for each of the events that we run. This picture that we're looking at is as if we are looking at this from the far side of the track, not from where all the identifiers for the starts, that, and the big bold headline. I know if you don't have the deck in front of you, you don't know what I'm talking about, but the location of the starting lines at the top, those are your stands, and you're sort of looking the other way. So I always have trouble visualizing this, but this is sort of backwards to how I look at the track. So keep this in mind. These are where your start lines are. And the start locations for each of these start lines is where the typical location of the starter. I know Scott is pretty regimented in getting the correct location for start so that he's visible to, and all the athletes who are on the starting line are visible to him as well. Rule and reminders for track. All races will start with a gun, no exception. So make sure your athletes are trained to start with a gun. And, there have been cases where, at the starter's discretion, because athletes, we find our athletes are all holding their hands to their ears. He may reposition himself, but that is up to him because he needs to see all the athletes on the start line. So train your athletes to start on a gun. If they're not able to do that, then perhaps then they just can't be running that event. If you have a hearing impaired athlete, they should be watching for the smoke of the gun in order for them to start. Okay, for the starts, for track events, races up to and including 400 meters, use a three-command start on your marks, set, and then the gun goes off. For races longer than 400, there will be a two-command start on your marks, and then gun fires. For races up to and including 400 meters, athletes can use starting blocks. We'll have some fountains available. You can bring your own. False starts are charged to the individual athlete, not to the team, not the field. Two false starts is a DQ, and they will not be running that event. At the starter's discretion, a restart may be called if there's a stumble or some other issue at the start line that happens relatively close to the actual start of the race. Sometimes the gun misfires. Okay. Rule reminders for our running races. The athlete must race by himself. Coach, family escort, family member escort may not run with the athlete, may not pace the athlete on the side. So, keep this in mind for not only for our coaches, but remind family members and other people in the delegation if for some reason they are down on the track, and hopefully, we'll keep it relatively clear of folks who should not be there, but there's no pacing at any point on the track for our athletes. Visually impaired athletes, if they're not using a guide rope and they have a human guide, that's not considered pacing. The bullet there says provided by the meet. I noticed that the other day. Generally, for the couple of athletes who use a human guide, usually the delegation is bringing their own guide. In races running lanes with a curve, athletes must stay in lane.
Every year.
I'm sorry? Was there a question? Okay. In races running lanes that have a curve, the athlete must stay in the lane. Cutting into an inside lane shortens the course, or shortens the race for that athlete, and that is a DQ. In races on the straight part of the track, there is no DQ necessarily for leaving the lane unless that athlete impedes another athlete or leaves the track. .400-meter stagger start, race run entirely in lanes. 800 meters stagger start, must stay in lane around the first turn. Then you can have the cut in, and that's different from the NFHS rules. Longer than 800-meter race, waterfall start, and you can immediately cut in. The finish line. The place is determined by the order the racers cross the finish line, not their recorded time. We will have people picking the athlete's order of finish across the line, and we will have another set of folks hitting their stopwatches. What we will go by in terms of order of finish is what we see as the athlete's order of finish across the line, not necessarily their time on a stopwatch. We had an issue last year, and I don't remember, nor does it matter what team it was, where someone brought to me a videotape or a video on their phone of order of finish, and was hoping that I would change something based on his video. That won't be happening. Number one, I cannot look at video, and we'll talk about this more at the pre-competition webinar. The marshals and our course officials are empowered to make their judgment calls, and I will never be overriding any judgment call by the folks on the course. So again, the finish is when the athlete's torso crosses the finish line, not their feet, not their arms in front of them. And for athletes in wheelchairs, it will be their front wheels. Some more rule reminders for the relays. 4 by 100, we use a stagger start. Athletes must stay in their lanes throughout the event. For the 4 by 2, also a stagger start. And we will run this in lanes as we have for the last 3 years, the 4 by 2, in lanes throughout the race. For the 4 by 4, we'll have a stagger start. And again, as we mentioned earlier, if it's more than 4 teams and it's a 3-turn stagger, first runners must stay in their lane throughout. Second runner must stay in the lane around the first turn and can cut in after the break line. If there's 4 teams or fewer, there'll be a 1-turn stagger. It says new rule change. It's not a new rule change this year. I think it was actually a new rule change 2 years ago. First runners must stay in lane around the first turn and then can cut in at the break line after completing the first turn. Again, relays, passing the baton. The baton has to be passed entirely within the exchange zone. If an athlete drops the baton, if the incoming athlete drops the baton, then that same athlete needs to pick it up and make the exchange. The incoming athlete cannot drop it and have the next athlete pick it up. That is not a valid exchange. If you have your athletes who are ready to use the fly burn, that's perfectly acceptable. And we want to emphasize, Mike, I'm not sure if you're seeing my screen anymore. It says my go-to connection has been lost.
It is showing the relays, excuse me, rules reminder.
And I just clicked. Did you see me go forward?
No, did not.
Okay.
What? Let me become, or actually, Natalia, if I make you the presenter, do you have the slide deck up?
I'm on slide 23.
Okay, let's see.
Ron, we're seeing, is on your screen 4 by 200 relay? Since
Oh yeah, I just went to my.
You're back.
I left presentation, so it's back.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and mute again, and if we run into that trouble again, we'll just pass it off to Natalia, and she can click through while you finish your session, and then she can go right to hers.
Yep, that sounds good.
Thanks.
Okay. Use fly zone, alternates rosters. You may list your alternates for relays, and we'll go over this more at the pre-competition webinar. These athletes must be entered as a regular athlete in the overall event. They may be assigned to specific teams, maximum of 2 per team, or they may be an unassigned alternate, in which case you can designate them, as need be towards the end. But they may not be a regular runner on another team, or another relay team. Okay, 4 by 2, we've been running this since 2013. If you have athletes who would like to run 2 relays, this needs to be one of them, 4 by 2 on Saturday, in addition to either the 4 by 1 or the 4 by 4 on Sunday. A couple of slides on training suggestions. If you don't have access to a track in your area, like running on a sidewalk or asphalt or hallway or grass, using paint or tape or chalk or anything that sort of makes sense. Things like sticks probably doesn't make as much sense. Practice using a gun. You don't want your athlete to hear a gun for the first time at competition, at either the summer games or at any of the qualifiers. You want them to practice with a gun if at all possible. Excuse me, practice for throwing events when you don't have a track. A little bit simpler for the throwing events. You can mark your vectors on anything with chalk. Again, the ball throws, softball or tennis, are 3 feet deep, 3 meters deep, 2 meters across, and for mini jab, 8 feet deep, 8 meters deep, and 4 meters across. Shot put, to the best of your ability, practice with a toe board. If you don't have a toe board, mark a circle on the ground or the floor. And again, I guess at coaches training we'll go over this a little bit more, but emphasize that the shot put especially is a push, not a throw. You can really injure your shoulder or throw yourself out of whack by having your athlete, not having your athlete, but if your athlete tends to try to throw the shot. For all the throws, to the best of your ability, get vectors out there so that your athlete has a visual of the area that they're throwing to. For your practice, it doesn't have to be perfect, but we want our athletes to not be seeing these vectors for the first time in competition. Jumping events, we'll be using jumping tips for long jump and standing long jump, and certainly that's our preference and our recommendation is always use sand pits if they're available. Playgrounds often have sand, as long as we're not jumping into playground equipment, make sure that's safe. For high jump, if you're going to have your athletes train on the high jump, certainly want to emphasize doing that as safely as possible and using the proper high jump equipment on either your high school or college track. Qualifiers. In a slide or two, we'll show the qualifiers that we're aware of at the moment, where they are, who's hosting them. But we want them to emulate the state level competition from all aspects, follow all the Special Olympics and USATF track and field rules. We're asking that you don't artificially limit to 3 athletes per division, but do division your athletes based on their ability, level, gender, and age, similarly to the way they would be divisioned at state games. So the idea, and I'm not sure if Mike or Natalia will speak to this separately, but you need to run your qualifiers as if this were a state competition, because that's the only way your event qualifies as a qualifier. I'm not going to read through these. You'll get this slide so you have available. These are all the athletics qualifiers in 2016. We have 5 of them scheduled starting on April 20th, and Carroll County, and the last one being Baltimore County on April the 14th. So we're looking for additional qualifiers. Work with your area directors or regional sports directors if you would like to consider hosting a qualifier.
And Ron, just one note with that for folks. Not all of those qualifiers or those competitions are open to everybody.
Okay.
Some of them, there's limited numbers of spaces and such there. So.
Okay. So
Also, sorry, Ron. Also, we have received other sanction forms for more athletic qualifiers, which is awesome. And I will be sending out that information along with all the other information on Friday.
Okay, there you go. Resources, MySOMD. If you don't have an SOMD log on, please request one. I'm not sure if that's through your regional sports directors or through Mike or Natalia, but lots of good information out on MySOMD. All the rules for athletics and coaching registration guides and a lot of really good information is at specialolympics.org, and you can go to usats.org for track and field rules, and usats officials.com for resources for officials if the folks officiating at your qualifiers want to, get some good information.
Okay. And Ron, my SOMD folks can sign up for that right on the website. There's a
Right.
there's a sign up click or link right there.
Okay. One of the last slides, I'm not sure if it's the last slide, is where you can order your track and field equipment. This is certainly not a all-encompassing list, but these are some that different areas have used in the past, and so you have some places to go for to replacing the equipment that you need for your athletes. So I guess before we get to the official slides that someone, not me, will go over, I think. Are there any questions that I can address or that we can talk to now before we move on? Excuse me. Okay. So am I right, Mike? Is someone not me talking about these, or?
Yes. Natalia, I'll go ahead and make you the presenter.
Okay, that sounds good. Ron, unless you want to keep going, you're on a roll there. But I can talk about the administrative slides.
Okay. And you should have something pop up on your screen that says "Show your screen."
Okay.
There we go. If you can make your PowerPoint like there we go. That's perfect.
Good. All right. Okay. So for those of you who do not know me, my name is Natalia Steffen. I'm the new Regional Sports Director for Special Olympics Maryland. I'm also the sport lead for athletics. So just as a reminder, this webinar is being recorded. The link to this recording, along with copies of the handouts and other information that we talked about within this webinar, including the rules, if there are any rules, updated from Special Olympics International for Athletics. We will let you guys know. I will be getting that information out to you guys on Friday. Okay. So I realize that everyone, or the majority of everyone on this webinar, knows our policy regarding athlete medicals and volunteer applications. For those who don't know, I'm just going to reemphasize this point to everyone. No athlete or volunteer may participate in any manner in Special Olympics Maryland programs without a valid and current medical form or volunteer application. There are no exceptions to this rule. If you have to make an athlete sit during the first practice because they don't have their forms in or their forms have expired, then that's what you're going to have to do. You cannot allow an athlete who does not have a valid medical participate in your program. Our registration deadlines. Here are some of our standard Summer Games related deadlines. The first one we'll talk about is the training registration deadline, which is April 21st. This is the date in which you need to have everybody who is participating in your program registered into GMS. For those who don't know, there's somebody in your county or area who's designated as your GMS person, and they're responsible for entering all the rosters into the system. Please plan ahead and talk to that person, turn in your roster to them, and make sure you turn it into them at enough time so they can enter all the information before this deadline. If you don't know who that GMS person is, contact your area director after this webinar, find out so you can start communicating with them and working with them through these deadlines. Again, you need to get everyone in your program registered by this deadline of April 21st. Anyone who is entered after this deadline will not be eligible to participate in summer games. You can definitely add the athlete to your program. They can practice with your team and they can practice in local meets, but they will not be eligible to compete at summer games. The next date is the last date to submit missing forms to Special Olympics Maryland, and that deadline is May 2nd. We realize that the registration deadline may be difficult for some people to meet because of scheduling conflicts, trying to get into the doctor's office to get a medical form completed, whatnot. So we've established this date for those people who needed a little extra time to get the last remaining parts of their application to us beyond their training registration deadline. So May 2nd is the date that those papers need to be at SOMD headquarters. Please do not mail, email, or fax these papers to us. There is someone in your county or area who is designated to handle this. We have a secure portal that we use, and that person knows how to, that person in your county knows how to access it. They know the process in submitting those papers to us. So again, please do not email or fax or mail these papers to us. Please go through that person. Again, if you don't know who that person is, contact your area director and find out. Also, with medical forms and volunteer applications, please make sure that all of those forms, your form including, is valid through summer games. Anyone who does not have a valid or a medical form or volunteer application that's valid through summer games will not be able to participate in summer games. So please work with your area director or your GMS people in the areas and figure out what needs to be turned in and for your program.
And,
also,
Natalia, if I can interrupt for just a sec.
Yeah.
Just to clarify with that, you're doing a great job. This is her first webinar, folks, so nice work so far. With that, just to clarify, that they have to have their medical or their volunteer application that's valid through summer games at the beginning of the season. So it's we have to have in our hands by May 2nd. All everyone at that point has to have their medical or volunteer application valid through June 12th. After that date, if you don't get to, somebody's expires in at the end of May, you don't have until the end of May to turn it in. We don't. No other organization in the world that I know of has stuff expiring mid-season, and we haven't for the last several years. So, anyhow, I just wanted to clarify that. Thanks.
Cool. Thanks, Mike. So make sure everything is in by this date, which is May 2nd. Along with that, with medical forms and volunteer applications, please make sure that all head coach certification is into us by this time. For those who don't know about the head coach certification, I'll talk about that in just a couple minutes. But certification, everything last date for missing forms of any sort to be submitted to SOMD, that's May 2nd. The next date is competition registration deadline. That is May 23rd. This is the date in which all athletes who are eligible to compete in summer games in your program, those who have turned in all the forms on time and have valid medicals, need to have their events and entry information entered into GMS. Again, talk to the GMS manager in your area so they can tell you when that information needs to be into them so they can meet that deadline. This is also very important. After May 23rd, after this deadline, any athlete or unified partner that does not have an event will be deleted from summer games. So you have to make sure that any athlete or unified partner that is in your program has an event in GMS before this deadline. If they do not have an event entered in GMS for summer games, they will be deleted. It's very, very important. The final deadline is the last date to update scores. That is May 31st. This deadline is giving you the opportunity to submit improved scores for those who are already entered into GMS. This is not an opportunity to change events or lower a person's score. This is just only a time to enter and submit improved scores. So, also, as I mentioned before, going through the deadline, make sure you are working with your your area leadership, the GMS manager, making sure that everyone in your program has the valid and current medical forms, volunteer applications. Find out who in your program does it, who you need to talk to, and make sure that they know they need to get a new application in, a new medical form in. Please work with your area leadership, communicate with them so they can help you and meet these deadlines and everything. All right, concussion certification. This is a requirement set by Special Olympics International and Special Olympics North America. All coaches must complete a concussion training prior to the starting of coaching. I'm sure all of you know this already. We're talking about it before. We started it in January of this year. You need to have a concussion certification completed. If you do not have a concussion certification, you will not be able to participate as a coach until the training is complete. In order to meet this requirement, you need to do one of the following. You need to do the following. Complete one of two approved courses. As you can see, there are options listed there on the slide, either the CDC Heads Up Concussion in Youth Sports or the NSHS Concussion in Sports. They are both online, doesn't take very long, and they're free. The next thing you're going to do is submit evidence that you've completed the training to SOMD. Please submit the certificate as a PDF to coaches@somd.org. We are not automatically notified when our coaches have completed the training, so please, as soon as you complete that training, send it off to us so we can update everything in GMS for you. And the certification is valid for 3 years. Qualifying for states, just the key takeaways from the slide. In order to qualify for the state tournament, you need to make sure all paperwork, meaning all medical forms, volunteer applications, concussion training certifications, have been completed, turned in on time, and are valid. You also have to have completed at least 2 sanction qualifiers for track and field as well.
Natalia?
Okay. Yes.
On the concussion, is there a charge for coaches?
No. Concussion training is free.
Thank you.
Yep, not a problem.
Actually, it is free. Just in case people use the NFHS one, it makes you actually go through their shopping cart and purchase the course, but it's still free. That's one of the reasons why we recommend the CDC course. It's a lot easier to get it started. It's also 15 minutes shorter.
Okay, so I'm not going to...
Natalia, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
one more quick question on concussion. I think you said it, but I missed it. Is it all head coaches or all head and assistant coaches that are going to need to certify for concussion?
It is, I believe it's all coaches. All coaches need to be, yep, all coaches need to have concussion certification.
Great, thanks.
Yep, not a problem. Okay, so these slides, I'm sure everyone's already seen them. They're just the typical athlete, medical, and volunteer applications, so I'm not going to talk about them. I'm just going to briefly go through these. Just make sure every athlete has a athlete medical that's valid, has filled out properly. It's good for 3 years. So also work with your, area leadership and make sure that the athletes in your program have valid medical so they can participate through for the season. Here are the forms for the athlete medical. Volunteers, same thing. Make sure that you work with area leadership, find out who in your program, needs to work on or needs to turn in a volunteer application or do their protective behavior training. One big thing that we've noticed for volunteer applications on the 3rd page, I'll show you really quickly. The housing policy and concussion, the information on concussion, both sections need to be signed. Even though you may not be going for any overnights, it's just you need to be signing these papers. If you don't sign them, we will send them back to you, ask you for signatures. So save you time, save us time. You should just sign those forms. It's just acknowledging that we have a concussion. We have concussion information there as well as a housing policy. This is the student to minor reference form. This is for minors. This is the first report for any incidents that happen during practices or qualifiers. Head coach certification. I'm sure all of you know about our head coach certification. This is a longstanding policy with Special Olympics International. Special Olympics Maryland has just started rolling it out last year, basketball. All head coaches must be certified for summer games. They have to have something by May 2nd. It's valid for 3 years, and there are plenty of opportunities in which to get the certification that I will go over. So coaches who have previous Special Olympics sport certifications in their specific sport must complete one general or one sport-specific learning opportunity. Coaches with no previous Special Olympics sport certification in their sport must complete the coaching Special Olympics athletes or principal coaching. I took the ASEP coaching Special Olympics athletes. Didn't take very long. I thought it was a very good course, and I highly recommend it. This will apply to all coaches, not just head coaches, at some point in the future. So keep that on your radar, guys. Soon, all coaches are going to need to have certifications, not just head coaches. And make sure that all certifications get in by the last date to submit paperwork to SOMD, that deadline, okay? Currently scheduled coaches trainings. You will see 2 on there right now that say live, and they're at Towson University. They're the athletics coaches trainings. Right now, those have not been finalized. We've been talking with Towson, but they have not been finalized. They have not been confirmed. Right now, the only ones that have been confirmed are the webinars. We have the athletic coaches training on Monday, April 4th. The athletics master learning session. This one really is just for coaches who've had 5 years experience, and their area directors have nominated them for this learning session. That one is on April 13th, and then the athletics officials training, which is on April 18th. I've heard through the grapevine that we may be having a live coaching Special Olympics athlete course, but as of right now, nothing's been confirmed or finalized, so I have suggested the ASEP one, as you can see, and I have the website right there. If you're looking to host one, looking to host a training, the information's down here at the bottom. Again, these slides will go out on Friday. You guys can have all that information.
Natalia, a heads up, we've only got about 5 minutes before we have to definitively end to start the webinar.
Not a problem. So this is a menu, if you will, of what ASEP offers. Again, it will go out on Friday. You guys will be able to see everything. And then approved courses, you guys will get this information as well on Friday. And then if you have any questions regarding summer games or athletics, you can contact one of your regional sports directors, or you can contact me, the athletics sports lead, and we will be more than happy to help you with your questions.
So that said, we have a couple minutes if anybody has any questions that they haven't had a chance to ask. And by the way, hi folks, this is Mike Zarnowski with Special Olympics Maryland, also a track coach for Baltimore County. So, and if you do have a question, remember to unmute your phone. No? Okay. Ron or Natalia, any closing thoughts other than thank you to everybody for spending
Sorry.
time and
Mike,
what you're going to do the rest of the season? Yes.
Mike, one question.
Sure.
Can, in the lead up to summer games, in some of our qualifiers, can we have athletes do both softball throw and shot put to see and test them in those in those qualifier competitions, or does that rule no shot put and no softball apply to the qualifiers as well?
No, you can do that in the qualifiers. And I would caution you, I would only do that if you are, as you're saying, testing to see what they can handle.
Yeah, I just don't think we're going to be ready to do the Jeffs by April. I still don't have the equipment, so if I can have her do the people that I'm thinking about it, do it at our spring games, and then we'll start the transition as soon as I get the mini jabs in hand.
I don't know, just as a heads up, because Baltimore City just ordered them, and they went directly through the TurboJab website, that's the brand name, and got them in like 3 days.
Really?
Yeah.
All right, well, maybe we won't even have to do it then.
Natalia, we'll get from Courtney, the person she talked to there.
That would be great, because I haven't placed the order yet.
Yep. So we'll
Thank
put
you.
in the email
And this-
goes out. Yeah, that just happened in the last 2 weeks, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Without any more, Ron or Natalia, any closing thoughts, comments?
Oh, I was just going to say I look forward to the upcoming season. This will be my first season with Special Olympics Maryland and their track and field program, and I'm looking forward to working with everyone.
Great.
The only thing I was going to add, Mike, is I have heard back from virtually everybody on the athletics management team, and again, virtually everybody is coming back this year in the same role they've done in the past. So we're fully staffed up and ready to go.
Good. Lots of familiar faces for folks. Fantastic. Well, thank you much. And sorry we need to chat and run, but we have Bocce hot on our heels. So have a great night, everyone.